The twin suns of Zera 9 hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the rocky plains. Dr. Elias Carter adjusted his dusty coat and scanned the jagged canyon walls with a sharp eye. The reports had been consistent for weeks. Something unusual was moving near the settlement. Something intelligent. Something alive. Elias had been sent here to capture it, to bring it back for study. In his mind, the thought of discovering an entirely new species filled him with a thrill he had never felt before. He had seen many strange things in his career as a xenobiologist, but the accounts of this creature were extraordinary. Witnesses described a being that changed colors, shifting like liquid light across its skin, almost as if it could bend reality itself. It was small, no taller than a human child, yet there was an undeniable intelligence in the way it avoided capture. It seemed curious about humans, but wary, careful not to trust too easily. Elias crouched behind a jagged rock, peering through his optical scanner. He spotted a flicker of movement near a ridge, a ripple of shimmering blue and green that could only be her. The creature, he now thought of it as, she was moving cautiously, her form blending seamlessly with the stones. She paused, her eyes glinting, as if she could sense his presence. Elias's pulse quickened. This was it. The moment he had been waiting for. He moved slowly, making sure to stay downwind. One wrong step, and she could vanish into the rocky labyrinth before him. She had already outsmarted local hunters and automated traps for days. If he failed, the opportunity would be lost, maybe forever. Yet Elias felt a strange hesitation. There was something about her that seemed aware, almost human in her reactions, and yet entirely alien. Easy, he whispered to himself. No sudden movements. Alira froze as he stepped closer. For the first time, she didn't dart away or shimmer into another color to hide. She only watched. Her large, reflective eyes seemed to pierce through him, studying his intentions. She tilted her head slightly, a gesture that made Elias pause. There was intelligence here, curiosity too, but there was also fear. And perhaps something else. Expectation. Elias reached into his pack and pulled out a small device. It was meant to immobilize, to ensure the creature could be transported safely, but he hesitated. Could he do it? Could he take this living, thinking being and treat her as an object? He had studied ethical protocols for alien species, and he knew the guidelines were clear: respect, observation, and minimal interference. But his orders were to capture. He stopped and crouched lower, speaking softly. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said. His voice sounded strange even to his own ears, a mixture of caution and hope. Alira's eyes widened. She seemed to understand, at least in part, the meaning behind his tone. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, her body relaxed. That tiny moment of trust changed everything. Elias extended a hand, careful to avoid sudden gestures. His fingers were open, showing no weapons. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, almost daringly, she stepped closer, her movements fluid and careful. She circled him once, inspecting him from all sides. Elias held still, letting her take her time. He could feel the excitement building in his chest, tempered by the weight of responsibility. Finally, she touched his glove with a delicate fingertip. Her skin was cool and smooth, shimmering faintly like polished opal. Elias held his breath. It was a silent agreement, a fragile bond forming in the canyon's quiet shadows. He gently guided her toward a makeshift containment field, not a cage, but a soft, flexible barrier designed to keep her safe without causing harm. She hesitated at first, then entered cautiously, her luminous eyes never leaving his face. Elias breathed a sigh of relief. She had not panicked. She had not fled. Trust, however tentative, had been given. As they walked back toward the settlement, Elias spoke softly, telling her about the humans she might encounter, the curiosity she would inspire, and the need to remain calm. He did not mention the scientists who would arrive later, the orders that demanded observation and study, knowing that for now, the most important thing was to ensure she felt safe. The settlement came into view, small, metallic structures dotting the barren landscape, surrounded by a high perimeter wall. Humans bustled about. Unaware of the treasure Elias carried back, Alira's eyes flicked around nervously, absorbing the unfamiliar environment. Elias slowed, giving her time to adjust. She was quiet, but he could sense her processing everything. The shapes, the colors, the strange scents. Inside the temporary research station, Elias introduced her to a carefully controlled environment. Soft lighting, gentle sounds, and a variety of objects she could investigate. Nothing threatening, nothing sharp or dangerous. He wanted her to understand that this space was safe, that he was not a threat. She explored cautiously, moving with the grace of a dancer. Every motion was careful, deliberate. She studied Elias, too, as if trying to understand why he was different from the other humans she had glimpsed. He watched her, fascinated, noting every shift of color, every flicker of movement. Her intelligence was remarkable, but more than that, there was personality. Humor, perhaps. Curiosity, certainly. And a spark of emotion that he could not yet define. Over the next hours, they established a rudimentary form of communication. Elias used gestures, sounds, and simple symbols to indicate objects, food, and actions. Alira responded, initially hesitantly, but soon with increasing confidence. It was a slow, careful process, but every small success strengthened their connection. She was learning about him, and he was learning about her. By nightfall, Alira had ventured to the center of the room, circling Elias in a pattern that suggested she was testing boundaries. He knelt, presenting a soft glow orb, one of the objects designed for enrichment. She touched it lightly, then looked up at him, as if seeking approval. Elias smiled, softly. It was a small gesture, but a breakthrough. She was beginning to trust him fully. Outside, the twin moons of Zyra 9 rose, bathing the canyon in silvery light. Elias sat near the observation window, watching Alira. For all her alienness, there was a familiarity in the way she explored, the way she seemed to understand, at least in part, what he was offering. Humanity had always reached for the stars. But this was something entirely new. This was contact, connection, friendship. Alira paused by the window, tilting her head, and Elias realized she was looking at the moons in wonder. Perhaps they reminded her of home. Perhaps she simply appreciated the beauty of a quiet night. Either way, Elias felt a deep sense of responsibility. He was not just a scientist. He was a guardian now. And in that realization, he also felt hope. The next day would bring challenges. Other humans might not understand the delicate balance he had achieved. Orders would demand observation, perhaps containment. But for now, in this quiet room on the edge of a frontier world, two beings, one human, one alien, had found an unexpected bond. Trust had been given. And in a galaxy often defined by fear and conflict, that trust felt like a victory. Alira curled into a small space near the corner, her colors shifting in soft patterns of blue and green. Elias watched her, feeling a rare calm settle over him. She was not a specimen. She was a friend, and for the first time in weeks, he allowed himself to hope that their meeting might be the start of something greater than either of them had imagined. In the canyon below, the wind whispered through jagged rocks, carrying the faint scent of distant flora. Elias thought of the adventures that awaited, the discoveries yet to be made, and the lessons he would learn from Alira. He had captured her, yes, but what he had truly gained was far more valuable, a connection that might redefine what it meant to be human, and what it meant to meet life beyond their world. As the night deepened, Elias sat beside her, letting the quiet fill the room. She moved closer, her small body radiating gentle warmth. Neither spoke. Words were unnecessary. In that moment, they had found an understanding stronger than fear, stronger than orders or duty. In the heart of the alien frontier, humanity and alien life had discovered something timeless. The potential for friendship, trust, and hope in the vast unknown. The morning light filtered through the thin panels of the research station, casting long, golden stripes across the floor. Elias woke before dawn, listening to the faint hum of the settlement outside. Alira had already moved from her sleeping spot and was exploring the room, her shifting colors reflecting curiosity and excitement. She paused at a small table where Elias had left a set of instruments, designed to test her understanding and interaction. Carefully, she touched one of the objects, then another, before nudging a small cube with the tip of her finger. The cube moved smoothly across the surface, tilting slightly before settling. Elias watched quietly from his chair, his mind racing with possibilities. Alira's intelligence was astonishing. She seemed to understand cause and effect instantly. Yet she also displayed moments of playfulness. She was learning, adapting, and exploring all at once. Humans had often underestimated the intelligence of alien species, but Alira proved that assumption wrong. She was not only capable of understanding humans, she might surpass them in creativity. By mid-morning, Elias decided it was time to venture outside. He carefully opened the door, stepping into the bright light, and gestured for Alira to follow. She hesitated at first, her body shrinking back slightly. But then she stepped forward, her luminous form flickering as if adjusting to the brightness. The settlement was bustling. Humans moved about in their daily routines, tending machinery, transporting supplies, and communicating over the colony's low-frequency network. None of them yet knew that a new kind of life had entered their midst. Elias led Alira to a quiet area near a cluster of metallic domes. He wanted her to observe humans from a safe distance, to understand them without being overwhelmed. She crouched low, her eyes scanning the movements of the people. She mimicked some gestures, stretching an arm like someone reaching for a crate, tilting her head like a worker checking a tool, and Elias smiled. She was absorbing everything. Learning quickly. Watch carefully, he said softly. They are curious, but not dangerous if you stay calm. And if you show respect, they will respect you in return. Alira tilted her head, processing his words. She did not speak, of course, but her attention was sharp, precise. Elias felt a swell of pride. This was more than observation. This was connection. He had begun to understand that Alira was not just intelligent. She was capable of empathy, of understanding subtle cues. Humans often prided themselves on empathy, but Alira was teaching him a lesson. It could be learned, even across species. For several hours, they moved slowly along the outskirts of the settlement. Elias introduced her to simple objects: a water dispenser, a solar panel, and a mechanical cart. Alira investigated each one with care, touching, prodding, and sometimes tilting them in ways that seemed almost experimental. She was curious not only about the function but about the principles behind them. Elias realized that her kind of intelligence was not just adaptive, it was analytical. By noon, the settlement's leader, Commander Jarrus, arrived. He was a tall man with a weathered face and sharp eyes, used to commanding respect. He had heard of Elias's capture, though details were sparse, and he was curious. Elias approached cautiously, Alira following behind, her colors shifting nervously. "Dr. Carter," Jarrus said, his tone measured. "I hear you have a new guest." "Yes, Commander," Elias replied. "She's intelligent, and she's not a threat. I want to observe and understand her, but I believe she can also teach us a lot about her species and her world." Jarrus raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "Her world? You mean she has knowledge we could use for technology, supplies, maybe even advantage?" Elias shook his head. "Not advantage. Knowledge. Understanding. She is a sentient being. She deserves respect, not exploitation." Jarrus studied him, then glanced at Alira. Her skin rippled with patterns of blue and green, soft waves of color that seemed to respond to his gaze. He did not understand it, but something in her movement hinted at thought, feeling, and intelligence, far beyond what he expected. He nodded slowly. "Very well. But know this, Carter. There are others in the settlement who may not share your philosophy. Elias understood the warning. Not everyone would respect Elira as he did. Many saw aliens as resources, as tools to be used for human gain. He would need to be vigilant. He looked down at Elira, who had tilted her head at the commander's gaze. She seemed calm, but he could sense her cautious anticipation. He reached out subtly, letting her know he was there, ready to protect her. Over the next several days, Elias and Elira worked closely together. He taught her basic communication methods using a combination of gestures, simple sounds, and holographic symbols. She learned quickly, responding with her own signals, some intuitive, some playful. When he introduced her to interactive puzzles, she solved them in ways he had not anticipated, often creating solutions he would not have considered. Her mind was unlike anything he had encountered in humans or animals. Elira's presence began to draw attention. Some humans were curious, watching from a distance, fascinated by her shifting colors and unusual behavior. A few brave individuals approached, tentatively, offering food or simple toys. Elias monitored these interactions closely, ensuring she was not stressed. She responded cautiously, sometimes curious, sometimes retreating to observe before engaging. It was a delicate balance, and Elias was careful to respect her boundaries. One afternoon, a small group of humans approached with questions about the prize that had been captured. Their tone was not threatening, but Elias sensed impatience. They wanted to see results, to study her, to gain knowledge quickly. Elias stepped forward. "She is not a specimen," he said firmly. "She is a being capable of thought, understanding, and choice. If you wish to interact with her, you must respect her autonomy. No harm, no coercion, no experiments without consent." The group hesitated, unsure how to respond. Elias held his ground. Elira's eyes, bright and alert, seemed to understand his words. She moved closer to him, a silent show of trust. The humans slowly backed away, realizing that Elias was serious. In the quiet moments, Elias and Elira explored the outskirts of the settlement. She had a fascination with natural life, the small plants that grew near the base of rocks, the insects that scuttled across the ground, and the faint traces of water left by early rains. She touched them carefully, observing, and then looked to Elias, as if asking permission to interact. He nodded, allowing her the freedom to explore. Through these experiences, a bond formed that went beyond simple trust. Elias began to see her reactions, her intelligence, and her curiosity as reflections of what humanity could aspire to: a mind capable of learning, understanding, and caring. He realized that humans often relied on brute strength or technology to solve problems, but Elira solved problems with observation, patience, and creativity. She was teaching him to think differently, to value intuition as much as logic. One evening, as the twin moons rose, Elira led Elias to a high ridge overlooking the settlement. She extended a hand, gesturing toward the horizon. Patterns of soft, green, and blue danced across her skin, responding to the light. Elias understood her meaning. She wanted him to see what she saw, to experience the world from her perspective. They watched in silence as the moons reflected on the metallic structures of the settlement, casting long, luminous shadows across the landscape. Elias felt a profound sense of connection not only to Elira, but to the broader possibilities of life beyond humanity. She had taught him that intelligence and compassion could take many forms, and that humans had much to learn if they were willing to observe and listen. However, not all was calm. Word of Elira's presence had spread through the settlement, and whispers of fear and exploitation began to circulate. Some humans argued that she should be confined, studied, or even used as leverage. Elias knew he had to act carefully, protecting her without escalating tensions. He devised a series of controlled interactions, allowing humans to observe without interfering directly. Elira adapted quickly, learning to manage her reactions, shifting colors to communicate comfort or caution. As days turned into weeks, a pattern emerged. Humans began to recognize Elira's intelligence, her ability to learn, and her responsiveness to ethical treatment. Slowly, respect replaced fear. Those who had doubted her capabilities began to admire her, realizing that what they had captured was not a creature to dominate but a partner in understanding. One afternoon, while Elias and Elira were experimenting with a holographic communication device, a minor crisis occurred. A small fire broke out in a nearby storage unit due to overheating equipment. Humans rushed to contain it, but Elira acted before anyone else. Using a combination of gestures and the manipulation of light she had been learning to control, she created a temporary barrier of energy that redirected the flames away from the station. Elias watched in awe. Her action was instinctive, intelligent, and brave. The event shifted perspectives among the humans. Fear turned to admiration. Elira had not only survived among humans, she had demonstrated courage, ingenuity, and a willingness to act for the good of others. Elias realized that their friendship was becoming a symbol of what humanity could achieve: collaboration across species, respect for life, and the recognition that intelligence comes in many forms. As the sun set behind the distant mountains, Elias and Elira returned to the observation room. She curled into a comfortable spot, her skin glowing softly with patterns of blue and green. Elias sat nearby, reflecting on the week's events. He had captured her physically, yes, but she had captured something far greater: the understanding that humans could rise to meet the universe with empathy, patience, and courage. In the quiet of the night, Elias whispered, "You've taught me more than I ever imagined, not just about your world, but about ours too." Elira responded with a soft ripple of colors, her own way of acknowledging their shared understanding. Outside, the settlement rested under the twin moons, unaware that history was quietly being made. A human and an alien had formed a bond, built on trust, curiosity, and mutual respect. It was a small step, but it was one that promised a future where humans could not only explore the stars, but also connect with the life they found there in meaningful ways. Elias knew the days ahead would bring challenges. Other humans might not understand, and the pressures of duty and orders would test their bond. Yet in that moment, he felt a profound certainty. Elira had shown him what humanity could be: curious, brave, and capable of friendship that crossed the boundaries of species. And for the first time, Elias allowed himself to imagine a galaxy where humans and aliens could meet, not as predator and prey, but as equals, learners, and friends. The morning on Zera 9 began like any other, with the twin suns casting warm light over the settlement. Elias had just finished preparing breakfast when a sharp alarm sounded throughout the colony. Red lights flashed, and the familiar hum of routine activity was replaced by hurried footsteps and anxious voices. Something was happening, something dangerous. Elira stirred at the noise, her colors shifting rapidly, reflecting a mixture of curiosity and concern. Elias stood and guided her to a secure corner of the room, speaking in soft, calm tones. "Stay close," he said. "Nothing will harm you." She watched him, eyes wide, as he grabbed his communicator and ran toward the command center. By the time Elias arrived, the cause of the alarm was clear. A group of humans from a rival faction had breached the settlement's perimeter. They were armed, not with weapons intended for immediate harm, but with devices capable of containing Elira. Their goal was obvious: capture her for their own use, for secrets, or for power. The settlement's guards moved quickly to intercept them, but the intruders were well prepared, moving with precision and purpose. Elias felt a surge of determination. He had known this risk existed. Humans, he thought, could be just as dangerous as any predator in the galaxy if they sought to exploit what they did not understand. He sprinted back toward Elira's location, heart pounding. He reached her just as the intruders began scanning the building, seeking any trace of the alien he had sworn to protect. Elira's body shimmered, her skin changing in patterns faster than Elias had ever seen. It was as if she sensed the danger, her mind working quickly to understand what was happening. Elias knelt and extended his hand. "We have to move," he said. "Trust me." She hesitated, but after a moment, she placed her delicate hand in his. Together, they navigated through the settlement, sticking to side corridors and maintenance tunnels. Elira moved with astonishing speed and agility, weaving through obstacles effortlessly. Elias marveled at her reflexes and intelligence. She understood, without explanation, which paths were safest, which areas were likely to be watched, and how to avoid the intruders. They reached a narrow canyon on the edge of the settlement. Elias stopped, crouched behind a boulder, and whispered, "We can't outrun them forever. We need a plan." Elira's colors flickered rapidly, a sign of intense thought. Then she moved toward a small device Elias had given her for observation. With precise movements, she activated a light projection, creating a pattern that mimicked the canyon walls, making them almost invisible from a distance. The intruders appeared at the canyon's mouth, scanning and shouting orders. Elias watched as Elira adjusted the projection, shifting her own colors to blend perfectly with the shadows. The humans passed by, completely unaware of their hiding place. Elias felt a mix of relief and awe. Elira's ingenuity was extraordinary, surpassing anything he had anticipated. As they continued through the canyon, Elira began to lead him to a series of natural tunnels she had discovered during their earlier explorations. Each twist and turn was calculated, designed to confuse pursuers and provide strategic advantages. Elias realized that her species' intelligence was not only creative but also tactical. She was teaching him to think differently, to anticipate challenges in ways humans rarely considered. At one point, they paused at a small ledge overlooking the intruders. The rival humans had split into groups, searching systematically. Elias whispered, "We need to distract them. Can you create a barrier, something to hold them off?" Elira's body shimmered as she considered the request. Then, with a wave of her hands, she projected a series of luminous shapes into the air. The light reflected across the canyon walls, dazzling the intruders and making it impossible for them to see the path ahead clearly. Elias was amazed. The tactic was simple yet brilliant, and it worked perfectly. The intruders hesitated, confused by the illusion, giving Elias and Elira the time they needed to escape further into the canyon. He realized, as he watched her, that she was not just surviving, she was commanding the situation, turning fear into strategy. Hours passed as they navigated deeper into the rocky terrain. The intruders were persistent, but Elira's knowledge of natural formations gave them a significant advantage. She led Elias to a hidden alcove, a small cave with soft rock formations that could shield them from scanners and sensors. There, they paused to rest. Elira curled up, her colors softening as if to signal calm. Elias sat beside her, catching his breath. "You saved us," he said quietly. "I don't know what I would have done without you." She responded with a gentle ripple of color, her way of acknowledging the praise. Elias realized that this bond went beyond friendship. She trusted him, and he trusted her completely. They were partners in every sense, but the challenge was far from over. Elias knew the intruders would not give up easily. They would return with reinforcements, more advanced technology, and perhaps even dangerous weapons. He had to think ahead. Elira, sensing his concern, moved closer and began experimenting with the projections again. She tested different patterns, shapes, and movements, refining the illusions until they were nearly perfect. Elias watched, learning from her. He began to understand her logic, her thought process, and the possibilities of combining human strategy with alien creativity. As night fell, the sounds of the settlement faded, leaving only the distant echoes of the intruders' efforts. Elias and Elira prepared a plan. They would not wait for capture. They would strike first, using the canyon's natural formations and Elira's abilities to turn the tables on their pursuers. It was risky, but it was their best chance. The next morning, they moved. Elira led Elias to a narrow passage where the intruders were most likely to travel. Elias set up small sensors and scanners, while Elira manipulated light and energy, creating disorienting effects. When the intruders appeared, They were caught off guard. The canyon seemed to shift and move, shadows stretching unnaturally, glowing patterns dancing across the rocks. The humans stumbled, unsure where to go, unable to see the real path ahead. Elias and Elira moved swiftly, guiding themselves along hidden trails, staying just out of sight. They encountered several minor obstacles, fallen rocks, sudden drops, and uneven terrain, but Elira anticipated each one, guiding Elias safely. He marveled at her intuition, realizing that her species' survival instincts were honed to perfection. Finally, they reached a high ridge overlooking the intruders' camp. From this vantage point, Elias could see the scale of the challenge. The rival faction had set up temporary barriers, preparing for a prolonged search. Yet Elira had already begun to plan. She pointed to weak points in their formation, signaling a route that could allow them to escape entirely. Elias followed her guidance, impressed by the clarity of her strategy. Using the natural landscape and Elira's abilities, they executed a daring maneuver. They moved silently, staying low, using projections to mask their movements. The intruders, frustrated and confused, could not anticipate their next steps. Elias realized that this was more than survival. It was a lesson in trust, communication, and partnership. Humans often relied on technology and force, but here, intelligence and creativity prevailed. By the time they reached a safe plateau far from the settlement, Elias felt a deep sense of accomplishment. They had faced a formidable threat and emerged unscathed, relying not on brute force, but on understanding, collaboration, and ingenuity. Elira's abilities had turned what could have been a disaster into a victory, and Elias knew that their bond had grown stronger than ever. As they rested, Elias reflected on the events of the day. He had captured Elira physically, but she had captured something far greater: his respect, admiration, and trust. Humanity often believed it was the pinnacle of intelligence in the galaxy, but Elira had shown him that understanding and cooperation could elevate them beyond fear and conflict. Elira, sensing his thoughts, moved closer, her skin shifting in gentle patterns that mirrored his calm. Elias realized that this was not just friendship, it was a partnership that transcended species, a connection built on trust, intelligence, and shared experience. Together, they had faced danger, outwitted others, and survived. And together, they would continue to explore the possibilities of life, learning from each other in ways neither could have anticipated alone. As night fell over the canyon, Elias and Elira watched the stars emerge, tiny points of light in the vast darkness. They were a reminder of the universe's vastness, of the challenges and wonders that awaited beyond Zyra 9. Elias felt a profound sense of hope. With Elira by his side, humanity had the potential to rise to meet the unknown, not through domination or fear, but through intelligence, creativity, and compassion. In that quiet, star-lit moment, Elias understood something vital. The galaxy was not simply a place to conquer. It was a place to learn, to connect, and to grow. Elira had shown him a path forward, one in which humans could be more than explorers. They could be friends, allies, and partners in a universe filled with life far more remarkable than they had ever imagined. And as they settled into a small alcove, ready to rest after the day's trials, Elias knew that the story of their friendship was only beginning. Together, they had faced danger, solved challenges, and discovered the extraordinary power of trust. Tomorrow would bring new trials, new discoveries, and new lessons. But for tonight, under the twin moons and distant stars, they had proven that intelligence, courage, and cooperation could overcome fear, conflict, and uncertainty. The galaxy was vast, unpredictable, and full of wonders, and in that moment, Elias and Elira were ready to meet it together. The following morning, Elias and Elira emerged from their hidden alcove to a sky painted in shades of pink and orange. The twin suns of Zyra 9 climbed slowly over the rocky horizon, casting long, stretching shadows across the canyon. The intruders had regrouped overnight, no doubt strengthening their resolve to capture Elira. Elias knew that today would not be ordinary. It would be a test of trust, intelligence, and courage. Elira moved beside him, shifting colors in patterns that indicated alertness and determination. She had spent the night planning, considering their options, and observing the intruders' movements from their vantage point. Elias followed her silently, letting her instincts guide their path. It was a strange feeling, relying on an alien mind in perfect harmony with his own, yet it felt natural. Together, they had survived, learned, and now, they were ready to act. The intruders had established a temporary camp near the canyon's edge. From Elias and Elira's vantage point, he could see their guards patrolling methodically. They were confident, perhaps overconfident, and that was their mistake. Elias whispered, "We can't take them head on. It's too risky. We need strategy." Elira responded with a sequence of subtle gestures, showing him the weaknesses she had observed. Narrow paths, uneven terrain, and blind spots in their formation. Using a combination of human planning and Elira's abilities, they began a coordinated approach. Elira projected a series of luminous illusions across the canyon walls, creating multiple false paths. Shadows stretched unnaturally, rocks shimmered as if moving, and light shifted in confusing patterns. Elias marveled at her skill. Every movement, every projection, was calculated to mislead and disorient the intruders without causing harm. As they moved closer, they encountered the first patrol. The humans paused, scanning the canyon, unaware of the duo hidden in plain sight. Elira adjusted the light around them, making their figures almost invisible. Elias could see the patrol faltering, uncertainty creeping into their actions. One guard pointed a scanning device in their direction, but the illusions were too convincing. He lowered it, frustrated. They continued through the canyon, Elira leading Elias along hidden paths she had discovered in prior explorations. She moved with grace, her senses attuned to every detail. Elias followed closely, noting how her intuition surpassed any human strategy he had ever known. They approached a narrow pass that would take them directly above the intruders' camp, allowing them to act decisively. Elira stopped and turned to Elias, conveying a plan through subtle gestures and color shifts. Elias understood immediately. The idea was to create a diversion, draw the intruders' attention away from their escape route, and then move quickly to a safe location beyond the canyon. He nodded, ready to follow her lead. With a quick motion of her hands, Elira projected glowing patterns that shimmered like flowing water across the canyon walls. The intruders were momentarily captivated, their focus drawn to the illusions rather than the real threat. Elias used the moment to climb quietly to a higher ledge, positioning himself to guide their path while remaining out of sight. The intruders began to respond, splitting their forces to investigate the illusions. Elira adjusted her projections dynamically, anticipating their movements and adapting in real time. Elias could hardly believe what he was witnessing. This was not mere camouflage or trickery. It was strategy, creativity, and intelligence combined in a way humans had never experienced. As they descended into the canyon closer to the camp, Elias and Elira executed the final part of their plan. Elira created a dazzling display of shifting lights that temporarily blinded the intruders' sensors. Elias used the distraction to position small sound emitters, creating the illusion of multiple movements and footsteps throughout the canyon. The intruders, overwhelmed and disoriented, began to retreat, to regroup, unable to discern reality from illusion. Elira and Elias moved swiftly, navigating through the chaos with precision. Every step was calculated, every action deliberate. They reached a hidden plateau, a vantage point from which the entire canyon was visible. The intruders, frustrated and confused, were now disorganized, giving Elias and Elira the chance to escape entirely from the immediate threat. But even as relief washed over them, Elias knew the danger was not over. The intruders might return with reinforcements, stronger technology, or more aggressive tactics. They needed a long-term solution. Elira seemed to understand, shifting her colors in patterns that indicated thought and planning. Together, they surveyed the canyon and devised a strategy that would ensure her safety without resorting to violence. Alira led Elias to a secluded valley at the canyon's far end, a hidden area she had discovered during their initial explorations. It was surrounded by natural rock formations, covered in shadows, and shielded from the settlement and intruders alike. Here, she could remain safe, while still having the freedom to explore and learn. Elias recognized the genius of her choice. This was not confinement, it was protection, respecting her autonomy while ensuring her survival. They set up temporary sensors and observation tools to monitor the area, allowing Elias to continue his research without interfering with Alira's freedom. She explored the valley with delight, interacting with small flora and fauna, observing patterns in the environment, and experimenting with her light projections in ways that delighted and fascinated him. Each day, she learned more about the humans, and Elias learned more about her, the two of them growing in understanding together. Over time, the humans in the settlement began to take notice. Stories spread of the alien who had outwitted intruders without harming anyone, of her intelligence, creativity, and bravery. Fear turned to admiration, and many began to see Alira not as a captive or tool, but as a partner and friend. Elias realized that this shift in perception was more important than any scientific data he could collect. Humanity's ability to respect and learn from other life forms was a lesson far more valuable than domination or conquest. One evening, as the twin moons rose above the canyon, Elias and Alira sat together on a small ledge overlooking the valley. She shifted her colors softly, communicating calm and trust. Elias looked at her, feeling a sense of profound gratitude. She had taught him lessons that no book, no experiment, and no human mentor could have. She had shown him that intelligence, empathy, and creativity could be far more powerful than fear, force, or technology alone. Elias spoke softly, almost as if to himself. "We've faced danger, Alira. We've outsmarted others and survived together. But more than that, you've shown me what humans can be if we choose to be better." Alira responded with a gentle ripple of colors, her way of acknowledging understanding. Days passed, and the settlement slowly adapted to the presence of Alira. Commander Jarrus and other leaders began to respect her autonomy, observing her from a distance, fascinated by her behavior and intelligence. They began to understand that she was not just a specimen to be studied but a being capable of thought, emotion, and choice. This realization sparked a cultural shift within the colony, a new perspective on the value of life beyond humanity. Alira continued to learn, exploring the valley, experimenting with light and energy, and even helping Elias develop new tools and methods for understanding alien species. Their partnership was no longer just one of protection and guidance, it was mutual learning, collaboration, and trust. Humans had always prided themselves on innovation and problem-solving, but Alira had taught them a different kind of ingenuity, one that combined observation, patience, and empathy. One afternoon, a young human researcher approached cautiously, curious about Alira but respectful of boundaries. Alira observed silently at first, then extended a small gesture of greeting, her colors shifting in a welcoming pattern. The researcher smiled and slowly mirrored the gesture. This moment, simple yet profound, symbolized the potential for connection across species, a demonstration that fear could be replaced by understanding. As weeks turned into months, Alira's presence became a symbol of what humanity could achieve when it chose collaboration over conflict, curiosity over fear. Elias watched with pride as the settlement adapted, learning from both her and him. They had faced threats, outwitted intruders, and survived the dangers of the canyon together. But their greatest achievement was not survival, it was proving that trust, intelligence, and respect could change the way humans saw the galaxy and its life forms. One night, as the twin moons reflected off the canyon walls, Elias and Alira stood together on a high ridge. She extended a hand toward the horizon, her colors shimmering in intricate patterns. Elias understood immediately. She wanted him to see the world through her eyes, to experience the wonder, beauty, and potential of life beyond their own species. He smiled, taking her hand. Together, they gazed at the vast expanse of the canyon, the settlement below, and the distant horizon where the sky met the rocky plains. In that moment, Elias understood something profound. The galaxy was not a place to dominate or conquer. It was a place to explore, to learn, and to connect. And with Elira, humans could rise to meet it with empathy, creativity, and courage. Their bond, forged through danger, trust, and mutual respect, was stronger than any barrier, more valuable than any scientific discovery. Humanity had learned a lesson that could reshape its future. The greatest victories were not won through force, but through understanding, collaboration, and friendship. As the stars began to shimmer in the night sky, Elias felt a sense of peace. Elira, beside him, radiated calm and confidence. They had faced the galaxy's dangers together. And together, they had triumphed not through domination, but through ingenuity and trust. In that quiet, luminous night, Elias knew that this was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, full of wonders, challenges, and mysteries. But with allies like Elira, humans could meet the unknown, not as conquerors, but as learners, friends, and explorers. And in that realization, Elias felt hope not just for himself or for the settlement, but for all of humanity. He turned to Elira, who looked back at him, her skin shimmering softly in acknowledgement. The bond they had formed would guide them into the future, a future where intelligence, empathy, and courage would shine brighter than fear or aggression. Together, they would face whatever the galaxy had to offer, united in purpose, trust, and friendship. And as the twin moons reflected on the canyon below, Elias and Elira stood side by side, ready to explore a universe where humans and aliens could learn from one another, grow together, and discover the extraordinary potential that awaited in the stars.